Hey everyone, this video will be similar to the previous one, but this time around, it's about current playable characters possibly receiving an upgrade. I wasn't sure if I wanted to make this video at first, since in comparison to the previous one, every playable character is likely to have an upgrade eventually, and a lot depends on their overall popularity, but there are a few things that could be interesting to talk about. Also, I decided to structure it a bit differently, rating them based on how long it should take them to receive an upgrade. It will be a mix of meta, popularity, and low reasons, but as usual, this is just speculation. Some characters received upgrades fairly quickly, while others, despite being fairly old, never did. The time frame of the latest characters might be a bit skewed by the synchronization patches, but I'll take into account the CN release date, since it's a more accurate comparison. After all, some characters that still feel quite recent to us were actually released a long time ago there, and now will have the same schedule. That said, let's start. Nanami is the leader of the Church of Machina, and her influence caused the awakening of many other machines. She is one of the most important characters of the story, but since she recently got an upgrade, it shall take a while before she gets a new frame. Considering her importance, it will be most likely connected to a major event, so that will also depend on how the main story will develop from now on, since everything is still fairly open. Aikma is one of the most important members of the Church of Machina. In a way, she grew up with Nanami, and she was influenced by her very early on. Aikma's main purpose was to find Nanami, and she is her most loyal friend among the Mechanoids. Even future Nanami still simulates Aikma as her companion aboard the DeLorean Discovery. A new Aikma frame will be a great opportunity to develop the Church and Nanami herself, especially since Nanami just got a new frame. Also, she's one of my favorite characters, so she deserves an upgrade and more relevance in the current story. Anying's newest frame is also fairly recent, but without synchronized patches, she will be almost 2 years old now. She was also the last A rank to receive an upgrade to S rank, despite being somewhat new in comparison to many older A rank characters. She's both a member of the Church and a representative of Kolong, so it's a bit easier to involve her in the story. We are definitely seeing her again in the future, and expect her to get an upgrade in a few years. Veronica was the most recent character, releasing as an S rank straight away. I was hoping to see her more involved in the main story, especially considering her connection to the Church and her enmity with Schultz, but so far we only got her backstory, so we'll most likely see more of her through other characters first. She is also one of my favorite characters, and I really want her to be more involved in the story, but even if she gets an upgrade in the future, it shall take a very long time. Zhetavi was recently released as an A rank, but she is fairly popular, and I believe she will receive an S rank frame eventually. She's also one of my favorite characters in both design and playstyle, so that will be hard to improve with a new frame. Lore-wise, Zhetavi is a mechanoid with a vast computing power, and she will be a lot stronger if she wasn't held back by her current frame. An upgrade that would allow her to fully utilize her computing power would make a lot of sense. Also, she joined Babylonia, and I expect to explore the newly introduced Leibowitz company eventually, so that will be a great opportunity to develop Zhetavi, making her more relevant to the main story. Another possibility for Zhetavi's importance is that she could become another bridge between Babylonia and the Church of Machina. Considering it took Anying about a year to be upgraded from A to S rank, I'm expecting a similar scenario for Zhetavi. Even if we got Luna's newest frame somewhat recently, with the synchronization patches, she will be 2 years old. However, her void element should keep her fairly relevant for longer in comparison to a regular element, especially considering that the void theme is technically still missing a member, but I honestly don't know what they're planning to do with this kind of things. Lore-wise, she's supposedly the only agent of the Ascension network left, and one of the most powerful characters. Many other Ascendants previously under Vonnegut have also joined her now, and since not much happened in the story after she upgraded her frame, I don't expect her to receive a new one anytime soon, especially since it will have to be tied to a very important event. Alpha is one of the most popular characters, and both her frames probably brought many people into the game. She's about to get fully replaced by the new Leaf in the meta, for both Lightning and Darkblood, so she's definitely getting a new frame fairly soon, just like they did with Bianca. Otherwise, Alpha is a very unique Ascendant, since she disconnected herself from the main Ascension network, keeping only a portion of it for herself, so that she could retain her status as Ascendant without being influenced by the network itself. Alpha receiving a new frame could be an opportunity to finally explore this aspect, which could be related to whatever apocalyptic disaster the new Leaf will probably have to go through in the next update. Considering her status, Alpha could even be the next Void unit, since besides Vonnegut, only Cradle or Chaos will make sense for that role at the moment. Roland's current frame was fixed by Ishmael after he had been damaged by Gabriel's Terracotta Queen back in City 075. It's very old at this point, and Luna herself hinted at the fact that Roland needed an upgrade back in Stars Ensnared, which it was 2 years ago now. Luna could definitely upgrade Roland's frame at any moment using the Punishing Virus, just like she did with Lamia and herself, so at this point I think they're just waiting for a certain moment of the story to do it. Being a male character, it will have to struggle against a very fierce female competition, but I believe it will have its opportunity not long after Alpha. Meta-wise, Lamia was recently replaced by Bianca, and they didn't give her a leap with an affix to extend her permanence in the meta. Considering that she is very popular and fairly involved in the story, we are definitely getting a new Lamia eventually. However, being part of Luna's Ascendant, she is somewhat competing with them for an upgrade, since they will be most likely featured in main story chapters. I believe that both Alpha and Roland will have priority over her, so we might have to wait a little longer before getting a new Lamia frame. Lilith recently became playable, receiving an S-rank frame right away. That's usually the case when they turn bosses into playable characters, but it also makes sense lore-wise. Lilith is a very strong enemy, and most likely one of the main antagonists in the new timeline, since Vonnegut left and many other Ascendants have now joined Luna. She's not getting an upgrade anytime soon, but I expect her to become even more relevant in the story now, and she might get a new frame in a few years. Lucia also recently got a new frame, so she's definitely fine for a while. Lore-wise, her pirate frame is currently the best one developed by Babylonia, and since it's very stable, there is no low reason for her needing an upgrade. She is still the main girl of the game, so she will definitely receive a new frame eventually, but it shall take a few years. Lee is an awkward spot. Meta-wise, it was replaced by Lucia about a year ago, and in a way, even a bit earlier by Watanabe. Considering his importance in the story, it should be a top priority to receive a replacement. However, they tend to release Grey Raven frames about a year apart from one another, and since we are about to get a new Lee frame, I don't think we are getting a Lee upgrade for a while longer. Also, lore-wise, the Imperial frame is still one of the most powerful frames ever made by Babylonia, and in comparison to many other characters, Lee will definitely need a good lore reason to receive an upgrade. My prediction is towards the end of the next year, maybe a little bit earlier, but this can vary depending on the story, since I believe it will be related to an important main story chapter. Liv is about to receive a new frame, so she is definitely fine for the time being. Lore-wise, her previous frame almost killed her, forcing her to switch back to her previous one, so it made a lot of sense for her to finally get a new frame. Surely nothing bad will happen to her this time around, and she won't have to use her Eclipse frame for 6 more years. Chrome is both the captain and commandant of Strikehawk, one of the most important Babylonia's team. It was the very first team to be fully playable after Grey Raven, and even now, the only other complete team is Cerberus. Chrome was also the second person to receive a specialized frame, right after Lucia, and that was a very long time ago. Overall, Chrome is one of the most important Babylonia constructs involved in many parts of the story. At this point, I feel like a new Chrome frame is very high on the list, being a top contender between male characters. One should receive an S-Ray frame about a year and a half ago now. It's still very relevant meta-wise for both ice and glaciation, so it might take a while before it will be fully replaced. Lore-wise, his upgrade was also fairly recent, so it might take a very long time before seeing a new Wanshi frame. Kamui was part of the main cast of characters. Him not having a new frame after all these years is almost criminal, but here we are. You could argue that they released with 2 frames, and you could consider Kamui as another Kamui frame, but still. Despite being part of Strikehawk, which is very involved in the story, Kamui was always just there and didn't do anything too significant himself. In general, Kamui always felt like a very neglected character, as if they didn't know exactly what to do with him, but hopefully that can change if they give him a new frame. Also, Tenebrian energy was mentioned for the first time after years in Selena's newest chapter, so surely that means they're working on a new Kamui frame. Kamui is technically the original Kamui, which asked to suppress his consciousness in order to bring out a more positive personality after what he had experienced. However, Kamui's consciousness eventually re-emerged, and the two ended up separating into different frames, making them somewhat similar to the Alpha and Lucia's situation. However, story-wise, Lucia and Alpha being separated and growing into different individuals is overall more interesting because they're part of enemy factions, so there is a more engaging dynamic between the two, showing two very different paths of what was originally the same character. However, Kamui and Kamui are part of the same team, and they're mostly involved in the same missions and daily life. They have a very different personality, but they're not really experiencing anything different. Despite Kamui being the original, I feel like Kamui is more likely to receive an upgrade. However, they can also be restored into a single character that retains both personalities, just like they were in the past. Together, they could definitely make an interesting character, better portraying the conflict between the two personalities since they will be sharing the same body. It will be similar to Vonnegut having both Trout and Nemo's consciousness, and it's also an opportunity to make a cool character design, possibly having a form switch similarly to the new Bianca, allowing you to freely switch between Kamui and Kamui's personality. So, Kamui on its own is probably not that high on the list, but I feel like a Kamui frame has a very high chance of being a thing in the near future. Vera received a new frame very recently. Lore-wise, even if her frame was originally very dangerous for her, it was adjusted by the Science Council, so she doesn't even have a lore reason for further changes. Being a very popular and important character, she will probably receive another upgrade eventually, but it might take years. It's been a while since Noctis received this A rank frame, which was sadly replaced fairly early by Yada as a new A rank lightning attacker. Being a member of Cerberus, one of the most important Babylonia teams, I expect him to be upgraded to an S rank frame eventually. I would like to say very soon, but again, he is a male character and there are many of them that are competing for that spot at this time. Number 21 newest frame was released before Noctis, but it was an S rank frame, and even if relegated to a QTE bot, she's still part of the lightning team, something that I doubt is gonna change with the new leave. She is fairly outdated, and she never received a leap with the new affix, so she might get replaced fairly soon. That said, Karenina is still there, so who knows how long it will take. Lore-wise, number 21 has always been fairly unstable, and her feral frame was supposed to help with that by giving her a more beastly look, which showed a better performance during the adaptation tests. I don't know how they plan to develop number 21. They could push her into accepting this side of her, keeping this aspect even in a future frame, or reverse her into being more human, since what she wanted the most was feeling like she belonged with other humans, learning how to behave and interact with them. Regardless, I'm pretty sure she will get a new frame eventually, but it might take a while. Mostly because of Vanessa, Bambinata has a lot of lore relevance, which makes her a strong candidate for an upgrade to S rank. Also, lore-wise, Bambinata has many memory issues, and she was used to research the invert device by Vanessa's parents when they adopted her, since that was causing issues with her mind. This also reflects her gameplay in her A rank frame, which was a very cool touch. Considering Babylonia's constant progress on the research about the mind and the invert device, a new Bambinata frame could be a great opportunity to show those results, finally fixing her mind so that she can fully retain all her memories. Noan had a massive backstory when it first released as the last Uniframe, and from almost nowhere it became a fairly established character in the story. Lore-wise, Noan has a very stable mind, which is one of the requisites to receive a specialized frame, and he had even been considered for one before Lee received his hyperreal frame. The only reason why he didn't was because of his connection with the Ascendants, and so Babylonia was still suspicious of him. However, now could be a very good opportunity to solidify Noan and the rest of Dark Ares as an important Babylonia team, giving him a new specialized frame. Yata recently got her A rank frame, and I don't expect her to get an upgrade to S rank anytime soon. She might eventually, but lore-wise, at least so far, Scarab is not considered a top task force teams like Grey Raven, Strikehawk or Cerberus, so it's also possible that she will stay forever as an A rank character. I hope not, but there are so many characters at this point that it's very hard to feature everyone with multiple frames. Her involvement in the main story is also fairly minor so far, but things can definitely change in the future, especially considering that the main story is fairly open now. As another member of Scarab, this current situation is very similar to Yata. Her connection to Lilith could potentially make her a bit more relevant in the future, but I don't know to what extent. That said, I don't think she will receive an upgrade to S rank anytime soon. Karenina is part of the main cast of characters, and currently the oldest character still in the meta. She will definitely be replaced by another Dark Tank eventually, and I expect her to receive a new frame not too long after that. She is the captain of the engineering force, and considering her involvement in the story, it should be fairly easy to give her an important role that justifies the new frame. However, we are talking about Kuro here, so there is also a possibility that Darren will be replaced for 2 more years. Teddy is the vice captain of the engineering force, and together with Karenina, she's been involved in the main story for quite a while now. She was the only A rank to be featured in a main story chapter, and if they didn't need to alternate more A ranks in between S ranks, she might have been featured as an S rank right away, especially considering how strong she was for an A rank support. Just like Karenina, her involvement in the story will facilitate an upgrade to S rank, so expect to see a new Teddy somewhat soon, probably even before a new Karenina. A Dark 10 Teddy just to replace her would be very funny. Bianca recently received a new upgrade, so she is definitely fine for the time being. Considering she is one of the most popular characters, this won't be her last frame, but we might have to wait quite a few years for a new one. Bridget is the captain of the support force, and she's received an A rank frame almost 2 years ago after a very long wait in NPC jail. Being a member of the support force, she has been involved in many events, even if she never had any major role, but that can always change. I believe she's a popular character that can definitely be upgraded to an S rank frame eventually. Selena got an upgrade very recently, and honestly, I don't even know how powerful she is in comparison to other constructs, considering that she acquired a portion of Ishmael's powers. This by itself shall make her fairly important to the main story, even if her latest chapter felt somewhat disconnected to the previous events, but maybe it will become more relevant once we start the next narrative arc with the new leave. That said, Selena is definitely fine for the time being, but between her popularity and supposed importance to the story, she shall get a new frame in a few years. Ayla is one of the oldest characters still in the meta. Just like number 21, she never received an affix update, and considering that the ICE team hasn't received an update in a while, she might be replaced fairly soon. Lore-wise, Isla wasn't really involved in anything too important besides investigating the city of Constellia with Iris Warbler, so she might be less of a priority in comparison to other characters that are competing for an update. Considering her role, I'm still surprised that we got a playable Ishmael before Vonnegut, but I guess it makes sense for the story, since she decided to interfere despite being an observer. She is still a fairly new character, so she won't be replacing the meta anytime soon, especially considering that she's part of the Void team, which seems like it will be reserved for somewhat special characters. Regardless, we're not getting a new Ishmael frame anytime soon, especially since she's not really supposed to interfere, but considering her importance, maybe in a few years, most likely following the descent of the Edro Tower. However, it would be cool if they released an A-rank version of Ishmael, where she pretends to be just a regular construct of the Control Court. I don't think this will ever happen, but she's great with that outfit. It's okay, maybe we'll get Leslie instead. Chu's latest frame is somewhat old now, and she never received a lip upgrade with an affix, so she might be replaced fairly soon. Lore-wise, she's the leader of Cologne, and overall a fairly important character, since I expect that her Tabula Casha will become even more relevant in the future. After all, it has similarities with the Punishing Virus, in the sense that it was a way to contain a vast amount of information, and it can be used to somewhat counter it. That said, I feel like a new Chu will require a major event that will involve Cologne, and considering the Cradle and Schultz attack is still fairly recent in the current timeline, I believe we'll have to wait quite a while. It's been a very long time since Pulau became playable as a Uniframe, which was also fairly weird since she was the only one without any particular influence, resistance or immunity over the Punishing Virus. Lore-wise, Pulau has been somewhat involved in the story here and there, but she never had any major role, and her own chapter when she was first released was just a side story with basically no relevance. A new Pulau frame could also be an opportunity to expand the Cologne side of the story without needing a major event, so she might become a proper S-rank character eventually. Originally from Cologne, Changyu has been part of Akdilek for a very long time now. In general, Akdilek has been a fairly relevant faction to the story, but its characters have been very neglected, and even no one got featured after leaving it. A new Changyu could be an opportunity to develop this faction, but is probably one of the least popular characters in the game, and considering the stronger competition from other main characters, especially the ones that are even more relevant to the story, I feel like it will receive an S-rank upgrade, unless they really want to develop Akdilek as a faction. As another member of Akdilek, I feel like Sophie has a higher chance of becoming an S-rank character. Well, she's a girl, but also I feel like she's a better representative of Akdilek since she grew up there, and part of her ambition was to work to make Aslam a better place for the commoners, which will be very good if she was more involved in the process. Watanabe is a very important character and also part of the original cast. He is still very relevant for the meta despite being somewhat old now. However, similarly to Chu, even if he's definitely on the list of characters that might be about to be replaced, I don't think we will come back with a new frame very soon. Being an important character, it will have to be featured in a major story chapter, and it might be a bit too soon for that. However, the Forsaken did rebrand as Oasis, so we might see more of them soon. I just expected it would be through other characters first. Rosetta is still the only playable character of the Arctic Route Union. She was a very strong physical tank for a very long time, but it's been a while since she was replaced. Definitely a popular character due to its more unique appearance, so I expect her to come back eventually. Although, she might have less mechanical parts this time around. Lore-wise, she was very relevant early on, and she had only a couple of reappearances lately. Tatiana might steal the spotlight in being the next featured character of the Arctic Route Union, but I believe that Rosetta will still be a top candidate for a new S rank. Despite being still meta relevant for Glaciation, Aliza is fairly old now. Having Cecily as a mechanical companion makes her a very unique character, which could also be used to expand her lore since she was a Kurono test subject. Also, her goal was to find whatever remained of Utopia, making sure that they wouldn't continue to kidnap people to use for their experiments, and there is a possibility of involving her in something similar in the future. Also, she could officially join a Babylonia squad or department. I don't even remember where, but I believe she mentioned being interested in joining the Control Court, which will definitely fit her character, bringing even more development to other characters like Leslie and Ishmael. That's all I have for now, and hopefully I didn't forget anyone. Besides a few characters, I have a lot less confidence in this list in comparison to the previous one, since it's a lot easier to introduce new characters with their side stories, instead of making a new main story chapter that fits the already established cast. I tried to cover potential reasons that could justify a character receiving an upgrade, but at the end of the day, most of them are fairly involved in the story, so it's easy to find a reason to give them an upgrade. A major difference is that some of them are more important than others, and they will have to be featured in a main story chapter, which is a bit of a double-edged sword since it's a bit easier to make a somewhat unrelated side story. I believe we are getting a live stream soon, so we'll see some of the future characters there, which made me realize that I'm very behind with this video. Anyway, let me know about your predictions in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.